Then Dirk dies by climbing into the tank with Felix because these characters always have to die in the stories. It's dumb, but, you know, so be it. Anyway, you see what's so weird about all this?
Did what now?
Out of nowhere, this story...
He did what? He went... That's goofy, bro.
Master on the beat, let's get it.
For God! Stupid fucking shield! Get the fuck out of here! Jeez!
Victory!
Just kept on fucking shielding, man. Just because you play a character with a pussy doesn't mean you have to act like one. Fuck. Alright. 2 more.
4 months without a single FNAF episode. Feels like it's a brand new day for the channel. There have been so many new games, new meta theories, even some classic science episodes thrown in. I'm happy, I'm healthy. Life is good.
Is it
now? Time to relax.
What the hell? Okay.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory, the show where old habits and old animatronics die hard. Today we're talking about the 12th and final installment of the Fazbear Frights book series, Felix the Shark. That's right, friends, the final book.
A shark?
So the next 3 come out later this year. Anyway, let's
nice.
not think about that and instead focus on Felix. Now, this final book is special. Just like all the others, it too is a collection of 3 short, spooky stories vaguely connected to the wider FNAF lore. But where this one is different is that it's meant to be a collection of cut stories. As the official description reads, quote, stories that didn't make the cut for the first 11 books. Which, okay, they didn't appear in numbers 1 through 11, but still, they wound up getting published anyway as the 12th one. Is that such a big deal? In fact, because they're last, they're probably in the most important position of any of the stories. And while you might assume that they were cut because they were weaker or lesser than the 33 other Fazbear Frights that were produced, it's not really true. You cut the story about an animatronic shark, but you kept the one where a boy turns into a traffic sign. You cut girl solves dead body shoved into animatronic suit mystery, but kept tiny guppy bodies. You cut a security guard named Mike going around collecting haunted FNAF memorabilia, and yet kept Fazgoo. The truth is, we don't really know why these were cut. It could have been a quality.
We don't know what F is thinking, bro.
Confused the lore, or maybe, just maybe, it could have been that they were intentionally designed to set up secret puzzles that we were meant to solve, and those puzzles never got fully realized. Spoiler alert, I think it might have been that last one. I believe that Scott was planning to use this final book as a launching point, the start of a real-world treasure hunt that would have required using the books, the games, even stuff like the coloring book.
I mean, animatronic shark sounds cool, though.
Riddle so far-reaching and so complex, it would have required the cooperation of FNAF theorists from across the globe. Today, I'm gonna explain the clues that led me to this conclusion, but more importantly, I'm gonna ask you for your help. You see, while I'm reasonably confident this thing was never finished, I'm not sure. I can't be sure unless you all double-check for me. A few years ago, I asked for all your help in solving the security logbook, and a day later, we discovered the name of Cassidy. Today, I'm gonna ask you for something similar. I'm gonna take you on a journey through some weird corners of FNAF lore and some loose threads that I see in this new book, and then I'm gonna ask you for the favor. I need you to help me either solve this thing once and for all or debunk it. And who knows, maybe this is the push that we need to get the next major answer to the game's lore. But before you help me with the lore, I was wondering if you'd help me in another way. It's time for our newest
I'm not buying merch, bro.
I get for your run on a lamp, also base with a hit turning on. Don't know using in a light theory where items are actually want to wear and look cute on. And I think that it's straight so grab of items.
Jesus, how long is this segment?
In it, a small
Jeez.
FNAF always. Thank you guys so much for the support. Now back to FNAF. In order to unwrap the secret FNAF ARG, let's start by breaking down the stories in Felix the Shark, shall we? The final story, You're the Band, is probably the most obviously related to existing FNAF lore. In it, a small boy named Timmy becomes obsessed with everyone's favorite pizza murder franchise, Freddy Fazbear.
Oh boy.
His mother finds him a strange Freddy mask on the internet and gives it to him for his birthday. After putting it on, Timmy starts to change. He doesn't like the things he used to, he becomes moody and aggressive, he even yells about protecting the others when Granddad walks towards him with a knife. Eventually, Timmy is led to an abandoned Freddy Fazbear's building by a shadowy figure. The whole thing gives off some very solid Midnight Motorist vibes. In order to rescue him, his mother teams up with a former Freddy's security guard named Mike. Turns out the Freddy mask was possessed by one of the children from the original Fazbear murders. When Timmy put on the mask, the spirit transferred into his body, which allowed it to control him. When Mike and Timmy's mom arrive at the restaurant, Timmy is on stage in Freddy's position, performing alongside Bonnie and Chica. After getting attacked by the puppet, Mike manages to get the Freddy mask back onto Timmy, which captures the spirit. He then puts the mask back onto the original Freddy head, getting the spirit back to where it belongs. Now, gotta admit, I got really excited when I read the story. We've suspected for a while that FNAF 1 security guard Mike Schmidt was really Michael Afton going from location to location to undo the evils of his father, William. That's why we play as Mike through pretty much every installment of the series up through Ultimate Custom Night. It's why Mike's name appears in Sister Location, why Fazbear Frights burns down in FNAF 3, and why the security guard in FNAF 2 is fired for tampering with animatronics and odor, just like Mike was in FNAF 1. Up until now, that theory's never been confirmed, but this story seems to be strong evidence for exactly that idea. A security guard named Mike going around collecting the old artifacts from Freddy locations in order to help free the spirits of those trapped within. So that was already pretty cool. Totally made reading this book worthwhile. Anytime we can get more evidence to support a theory within the franchise, absolutely worth it. But while You're the Band was explicitly lore heavy, the other two stories were equally fascinating, but for different reasons.
Scoop and Felix's shark.
Odd or out of place, and comments from characters that seemed oddly specific in a way that just triggered my lore hunting senses. In the title story, Felix the Shark, we follow a young man named Dirk who's reminiscing with his friends about their shared experiences with Freddy Fazbear's. However, Dirk's memory is slightly different to everyone else's. He's convinced that there was an extra animatronic, a shark named Felix. When his friends make fun of him, Dirk sets off on a cross-country quest to prove that he's not crazy. It takes 6 restaurants, but Dirk eventually does learn the truth. It turns out Felix was made by the owner of one very specific Freddy Fazbear's after his son tragically drowned. Why would that lead him to a shark animatronic? Because it was a shark that actually pushed the body back to shore. Couldn't make this stuff up if I tried. Eventually, Dirk does manage to locate Felix. The whole FNAF pizzeria is hidden inside an abandoned water park. But the weird part isn't the where, but rather the how of finding Felix. You see, Dirk is only able to find the pizzeria using a series of clues that are found in a random novel written by the creator's daughter. In-universe, Felix's creator also had a daughter who grew up to become a popular author. And in one of her books, The Dogged Dogmatist, she hides a series of clues in plain sight within the book's dialogue. These clues ultimately prove meaningless to the characters in the book because they weren't meant for the characters. They were instead meant for the readers, to give them information they needed to find Felix. It is very weird. Anyway, Dirk figures all of this out and confronts the author. She gives him her butterfly necklace, and he uses all of this Indiana Jones style to unlock a secret key hidden in the bottom of an empty pool at the water park. The key unlocks the path to the secret Freddy's where Dirk finally finds Felix. And then Dirk dies by climbing into the tank with Felix because these characters always have to die in the stories. It's dumb, but, you know, so be it. Anyway, you see what's so weird about all this?
Did what now?
Out of nowhere, this story...
He did what? He went... That's goofy, bro.
Felix. And then Dirk dies by climbing into the tank with Felix because these characters always have to die in the stories. It's dumb, but, you know, so be it. Anyway, you see what's weird about all this, right? Out of nowhere, this story is talking about clues to a real-world location hidden inside of another book. Clues that are meaningless to the characters, but meaningful to the readers. Not only did this stand out to me as a suspiciously meta moment, but it also got me to immediately think about the previous Fazbear Frights installment, Prankster. You see, in preparation for the release of Felix the Shark, I wanted to refresh myself on all the previous stories. There are 33 of these things after all. It's a lot to keep track of. So I turned to another book, the recently released Ultimate Guidebook, which, if you don't know, has summaries of literally everything that's ever happened in the Freddy Fazbear universe, from the games to the books to the fan theories. Basically, if you're trying to catch up with the series quickly, it's definitely worth a read. And since this is the third and final addition to the book, one written by Scott Cawthon, you know that whatever is deemed most relevant for the lore is going to be called out within its pages. Anyway, each Each Fazbear Fright story has its own little summary page providing a general plot overview as well as a list of connections between the story and the games. Not everything here is useful, but it definitely gets you into the mindset of the authors, and it helps you see some of the connections that the stories were trying to make. Again, if it doesn't make the cut to appear in this book, you're likely barking down the wrong path. Likewise, if something is called out within these pages, it's at least worth considering when theory crafting. TLDR, as I was getting close to the end of my refresher course, I noticed this in the new lead section for the title story of Book 11, Prankster. Quote, some of the puzzle clues, such as Stinger, Moot, and even more frights, may have implications beyond the plot. Careful readers may want to give these scenes a second look. Implications beyond the plot, you say? Just like with Felix the Shark, it appears that the ultimate guide is also pointing us to meta clues within a different book. Clues that are meant for us, the readers, rather than for the characters in the story. So I went back to Prankster. In this story, the main character Jeremiah is trying to save his friends from a mysterious glitchy voice that's freed itself from a FNAF VR game that's being worked on at the company. Sounds pretty darn familiar. Along the way, he's presented with a series of riddles. Stinger Moot, which is an anagram of testing room. Give me one and I'll make more. Each one like the one before. What am I? Your next clue contains even more frights. To get there, you just need to follow the lights. I see you're moving closer to your goal. Follow the lights to make things right. And for the key to find where your friends hide, roll up your sleeves and reach inside. Now, I've gone back and forth over these clues multiple times, but it felt like a lot of them were just pointing back to stuff that we'd already discussed in previous theories. The give me one and I'll make more felt like a reference to the glitch trap cult, using FNAF VR's tapes to infect more playtesters. The following the lights clues maybe could be a reference to Princess Quest, where we have to light the lanterns to reveal the truth and eventually set Vanessa free, but none of this was new information. We've talked about all of this stuff in depth. Security Breach seemed to confirm some of this stuff, and to be honest, the connections I can make were speculative at best. I tried rearranging the letters into anagrams, didn't really get anything interesting. I even considered that maybe the Stinger, Moot, and even more frights clues were literal. The stingers of the Fazbear Frights books were the epilogues about the Stitch Wraiths, so maybe if the stinger is Moot, then the Stitch Wraith stuff is ultimately meaningless. Even more frights might refer to the next set of books, Tales of the Pizzaplex. I mean, sure, that's a valid explanation, but it was speculation at best, and also pretty darn lame. Why would you go to all the trouble of hiding meta clues like this about stuff that feels ultimately underwhelming? These aren't really questions that people were asking themselves, you know? So, at least according to the
I don't know.
guide, there's
Maybe you just dried up.
something hidden inside of that
You know,
Prankster
like
story.
how many
And
books
I'm
have you
not
read?
exactly
Has you
sure what it
wrote
is,
so
but
far?
there was
Like, come on.
even more that was suspicious with Felix the Shark. You see, Dirk doesn't just find the secret Freddys thanks to written clues inside of a random book. There's also a very specific drawing in the middle of that book. Here's the full quote when describing the Dogged Dogmatist, the book where the hidden clues are from. Quote, the man's search for the creature was convoluted on the whole, but certain lines in the book went beyond convoluted. They just didn't make sense. Neither did the drawing in the middle of the book, an ornate and frilly sketch of what looked like butterflies and flowers. The drawing was never referred to in the book, and it couldn't be related to any of the story. Were the odd lines and drawings some kind of code? For what purpose? And that's not the only time drawings are brought up in this one story. There was yet another odd reference in Felix the Shark that jumped out to me. Quote again, I'd forgotten all about Freddys, but yeah, now I remember. I loved the Freddys coloring books. That's what started my drawing. Eventually I got tired of coloring and just drew the figures. Last year, the official FNAF coloring book released, which for a normal franchise would be a big ol' who cares moment. But here, where the biggest character reveals happened in a spin-off children's activity book, yeah, I wouldn't put anything past this franchise. So it felt strange to mention a real-world item for it only to mean nothing. So, of course, I bought myself the coloring book and the official How to Draw book. I went through the pages over and over and over again, but the only thing I was drawing was a blank. Seriously though, I couldn't find anything.
Wow.
Loads of cool pieces of artwork, like this twisted chica that's only ever mentioned by name, but nothing major. I checked the black lights, I heated up a page or two to see if it would reveal some invisible ink. Nothing. Or at least nothing that I could find. And then it hit me. What if this wasn't about solving a mystery within the story, but instead something bigger, something more real? The clues in Dirk's book didn't make any sense until you were in the right place at the right time. This could all be hinting at an ARG, where just like Dirk, if you find the location, suddenly the clues that people had been theorizing about for months start to fall into place. Which leads us to the final story of Felix the Shark, The Scoop. In this story, a young girl named Mandy is an online FNAF theorist. No joke, she even signs off one of her posts by saying, and I quote, I can't share all my secret facts yet until I solve this game theory.
That's
anyway,
funny.
Mandy digs through the code of FNAF 3, literally FNAF 3 the game. It is mentioned explicitly, only to discover a hidden picture of a building. She tracks it down and she learns about a real-life missing children's incident. After a few nightmares where the spirit of the dead child appears, she ends up up going to the location only to find an old animatronic bear giving off a nasty smell. Surprise, surprise, the kid was inside of there the whole time. Mandy is praised as a hero for finally finding the missing child, and she closes out her blog by saying, quote, "I will probably never know for certain how this mysterious building is connected to the FNAF universe. The only thing I am certain of is if the creator wanted us to know, I think he would tell us." Just wow. Feeling a bit attacked, not gonna lie, though in my defense, if we waited for Scott to tell us anything, we'd know next to nothing about this franchise's lore. Just saying. Anyway, outside
True.
of the references in this story to theorists and the real world game of FNAF 3, the weirdest thing about this one is that it contains a lot of specific details as to where the events of the story take place. 33 Fazbear Frights in, and no other story in the franchise features this level of detail. The cities, the street names, file names, locations of buildings, details that are seemingly inconsequential to the greater story, and in pretty much every other book would be skimmed over or kept vague. When Mandy finds this mysterious image in the game files, she traces it back to Utah. Yes, the actual US state. This fact is further solidified when Mandy's mom takes her on a business trip to Cedar City, a real city in Utah, to complete the investigation. Now this is where the trail starts to go cold, because what Mandy's looking for is an old cinema on Willowfield Road in Peace Valley, which after a lot of Google searches I can tell you just doesn't exist, at least not in Utah. However, in the story we do learn that Peace Valley is only 15 minutes on highway from Cedar City, so I looked up where you can drive to in 15 minutes from the center of Cedar City, and it turns out there's a very small town just to the south called Canaraville. So I hopped onto Google Street View to check out other details that the book mentioned, like the old cinema, which used to be a pizzeria, as well as having a post office on the corner. Unfortunately, neither of these things seem to exist in Canaraville. They do have a post office, and it's near a corner, but it's more like the middle of the street. And so shy of me buying a plane ticket to go to the middle of nowhere Utah myself, my options were once again drying up. So, okay, but what about the actual game?
My man almost
Mandy
went
is
on a plane for this shit, bro.
I wondered if Scott had
Imagine.
retroactively put a file into the game that maybe everyone's missed, so I went over to Steam and looked at the update logs, but the game hasn't been updated since April of 2015, and I very much doubt that Scott's been playing a 7-year-long con, especially since Into the Pit, the first Fazbear Frights book, didn't hit store shelves until December of 2019. But Mandy wasn't just playing FNAF 3, it's explicitly mentioned that she's playing the FNAF 3 mobile port. So I took a look at those update logs. Same situation. The game hasn't been updated since February of 2020. Now, we don't know when this story got cut in the 2 years of Fazbear Frights run, so it could have been in existence then, but I'll be honest, I do not have the elite hacker skills to bust open a mobile game to look for the files. And so, just like that, I was out of options, out of clues, out of ideas. To be honest, I feel kinda defeated on this one. Weeks of looking through these books trying to find something that just wasn't clicking, and yet I couldn't shake it. The whole thing gave me some big Gravity Falls ARG vibes. For those of you who don't know, one of my favorite TV shows of all time, Gravity Falls, did this massive globe-spanning ARG back in 2016. It was a series that was all about hidden mysteries, ciphers, secret codes, complete with a book, much like the survival logbook, that you could buy that contained puzzles and secrets for the fan community to solve. And this ARG, launched after the conclusion of the show, tasked fans of the series from all corners of the map to work together in a quest that would eventually lead them to a statue of the show's villain, Bill Cipher, hidden out in the middle of the woods. Maybe FNAF was seeding out clues for something similar. Or maybe there were plans to do a similar sort of treasure hunt, but the plans got scrapped along the way. I can't be sure, but there were just too many weird details here that didn't seem to be mere coincidences. Regardless, I'd been bested, but that didn't mean I was done. The last time I felt like this was when the survival logbook released, but instead of giving up, I threw the clues that I'd noticed out to you guys, the theorist community, to help me solve it, and he came through. We found Cassidy's name, a name that has since been confirmed by Scott himself. So here I am again at the end of my tether, asking you for help once more. It seems like something's here, but if it is, I can't figure it out on my own. Maybe you're a theorist from Utah and you know the locations I'm talking about. Maybe you do know how to break open the files of a mobile game. Maybe you're as obsessed with this franchise as I am, and you too have the coloring book, and you notice something on those pages that I don't. We haven't let FNAF beat us yet, and we're sure as heck not gonna let it happen today. If you think you've gotten yourself some answers, or maybe just another lead, head on over to the Game Theorist subreddit to post your findings. I'm gonna be keeping a very close eye on this one, cause like you, I wanna see this franchise solved. Link is down in the description below to check out the Game Theorist subreddit. And speaking of what's below the video, one final reminder about the new Theoryware, which is available now. It's one of the biggest launches that we've done in terms of
so he knew nothing. Like he discovered pretty much nothing. right? I feel like he went through the books and found absolutely shit. Right? Absolutely nothing. Okay, I mean Mike, the character Mike is a big find, right? There's a pretty in the open type. It's not really a mystery, right? It's just if you read the book, you got a character called Mike. We have a character in the game that we play as. It's called Mike. Mike on the little thing in secured in sister location thing, right? But that's not a really big mystery solved. It's just a give. Just I don't know. Said it's like Scott just gave us a piece of a tiny little clue, I guess. Most of the time, names are big importance in this series, but I feel like knowing that there's a Mike going around collecting animatronic heads or whatever, and returning them to their normal bodies or whatever, isn't that big of a discovery, to be honest. So that's kind of yeah, I don't know. Kind of lame. Alright, we got one more.
At this point, we've solved every link.
The final security breach mystery solved. Until the DLC comes out, of course. So let's see.
At this point, we've solved every lingering mystery from Security Breach. We looked at this thing from top to bottom. Glamrock Freddy, Golden Freddy, the missing Bonnie, the infuriating Patient 46. We connected every detail. We called every child a robot. And that's where I was happy to leave it. FNAF dead and buried once more. Except for the time I talked about the potential real-life ARG, but we're just gonna ignore that that ever happened. But now, it's reborn yet again, risen from the ashes. With the drop of a brand new DLC teaser a month ago, and the start of a brand new book series, literally.
Oh, it was a teaser?
FNAF
Nice.
is back. Which means it's time I dive back in and cover the one thing that I was too scared to talk about when I was doing theories earlier this year. It's the one topic that very few have spoken about because it's just so darn confusing. I appreciate that probably doesn't narrow it down a whole bunch because let's face it, most of this game's lore feels that way, but this was on a whole separate level. Fred boys and manga girls, it's time to talk about the Blob.
Oh, yeah. Of course. What was that doing
Hello,
here?
Internet. Welcome to Game Theory, the show that's full of so much agony from analyzing FNAF, it could probably bring its own animatronic to life. Maybe then I'd finally get a vacation. Soon, my precious. Soon. So, you heard the cold open. There's a new FNAF book. There's a new FNAF teaser. But before I get to any of that, there's one topic that all of us left lingering from Security Breach. Everyone's favorite mass of animatronic parts and black tentacles, the Blob. Or, as I like to call him, Freddy Spaghetti. On that note, by the way,
I like that.
you're aware, but FNAF is in the
Freddy
process of becoming
Spaghetti.
a real pizza place. Not real. Basically, they're doing the same ghost kitchen stuff that Mr. Beast did for his food company, where existing restaurants just make extra food under a different brand. Actually did a food theory explaining it all. Check it out after the video. It's actually really fascinating stuff and very relevant to the franchise now. Anyway, with a real-life Freddy comes the need for some real-life food. And if Freddy Spaghetti is not an item on that menu, so help me, I will write a politely worded letter to their social media account and kindly request that they reconsider. Anyway, the Blob was, at the time, the mystery that no one could crack.
Then you've got the Blob as well. The Blob's just on another level of complicated.
With the Blob, there are so many animatronic bodies there that have no reason to be there. I'm gonna take a stab in the dark. I think I put Henry in the Blob.
The Blob is just a catch-all, all loose ends.
And anything we don't understand, it's in there. It's in the Blob.
But you know what? It's been half a year. I'm done just throwing all our unanswered questions into this literal landfill of a character. Today we're getting some definitive answers as to what and who this thing might actually be. And those answers are gonna do two things for us. One, they'll absolutely help clarify how we talk about this franchise moving forward, and two, they'll certainly have severe implications for the Ruin DLC that's coming out early next year. So in the event that you repress this game, and specifically this character in your memory like I did, here's the quickest of reminders. In Security Breach, if you stay past 6 a.m. and defeat all the other animatronics, you're able to descend down into the basement of the Pizzaplex.
Yeah.
It's there that you discover the remains of the FNAF 6 restaurant with a big ol' hole in the middle. Try to go down that hole on your own, and you're immediately jump scared by the face of Funtime Freddy attached to a big oily tentacle. But hop into Glamrock Freddy and he protects you, saying that his friends are here and that they're angry and confused. Then, during the Afton fight, those same oily tentacles pop in from the vents, trying to capture you or anyone, to be honest.
Wait, really?
Afton enough times and you get the final cutscene where the blob returns.
Wait, what?
Afton, to be honest. Burn Afton enough times and you get pop in from the vents.
That did not happen to me. I got chased by Roxy the entire time, and I hid behind the bed. That was my boss battle. What the fuck? There were supposed to be tentacles?
Trying to capture you or
wow, this game's so broken.
Burn Afton enough times and you get the final cutscene where the blob returns to drag Afton off into the ceiling to keep him in cold storage until the next game. And because this is one of only a handful of animated cutscenes in Security Breach, everyone assumes that this is the true canon ending of the game. So figuring out what this thing is meant to be must be pretty darn important, right? So I guess it's time for me to stop stalling and start
Yeah, it was
theorizing.
pretty underwhelming
The best
ending
place
though.
to start is to understand what exactly this thing's made out of. Because really, it's a who's who of FNAF history. Obviously, we see Funtime Freddy as its main face. As you're descending down through the hole, though, you can definitely make out FNAF 1's Chica. The shape of the head and the torso are a dead giveaway here. Peeking out is also FNAF 1's Bonnie. Notice the coloring
Bonnie.
and the lack of
Baby is in there as
cheeks.
well.
We also have a few random arms and legs popping out. These all match the style of FNAF 1 animatronics. Notice the 3 toes on the feet and the 3 fingers and thumb with no joints on the fingers of the hands. And that's about all that you can make out from just looking at this thing in the game. But if you extract the in-game model and look at all the other sides, you find that there's a lot more hidden here. Mangle is hanging out directly opposite Freddy's face, and if you look closely, you can also find its rib cage, arm, and 2 of its feet hanging out elsewhere. On one side of the blob is the puppet's mask, except it's missing one major detail. The iconic tears are gone. That is a huge clue that we're gonna need to address.
Oh, what?
Finally, we have Circus Baby's mask, the only one of the animatronics to not have her eyes lit up. Again, that is a huge detail that has to be important to this thing in some way. Baby's arm is also hanging around inside this thing. We know it's definitely Baby's and not Funtime Freddy's because Baby's hands have rounded silver tips on the fingers, just like we see here. Like I said, it is a real mishmash of animatronics. It's almost like Steel Wool wanted a one-stop shop for FNAF's greatest hits. And weird details like Baby's eyes being extinguished and the puppet's missing tears feel like the game trying to tell us something, but what? Well, after identifying each and every arm and leg sticking out of this thing, there was still one animatronic in the spaghetti that really got my Matt Pat tingle going. This guy right here. Hidden away at the very bottom of the mess is a naked endoskeleton consisting of a single animatronic head, 2 arms, and a missing eye, with a body position that looks like it's desperately trying to pull itself out.
Foxy.
His position right at the bottom also felt like he was intentionally hidden, the kind of thing that you would overlook a few times, but clearly he's meant to be important. He's the only animatronic in this mess that's missing an eye, but his other eye is illuminated, which immediately puts him on the same level as the more iconic characters that we see absorbed into this bizarre amalgamation. So, who is it? What is it? Just a random endoskeleton?
No, it's Foxy,
No,
100%.
could be. But to know for sure, I had to look closer. My first instinct was that it must be Golden Freddy. I mean, looking at the roster of characters inside the blob, pretty much every major animatronic is represented in some way.
It's
Freddy,
Foxy,
Bonnie,
bro.
Chica, Foxy, Puppet, Baby, all of them are here, but Golden Freddy is strangely absent. Plus, with the animatronic only having one eye, I thought that maybe it was discreetly hinting at the fact that while the crying child spirit was released in the good ending of FNAF 3, another spirit remained trapped in the metal. Cassidy, the vengeful spirit, still here and still angry. It felt very reminiscent of the 2 endings of FNAF 3. In case you don't recall, FNAF 3 was the first game in the series to introduce a good and bad ending. Finding all the secret minigames led you to Happiest Day, where the souls of the dead kids are put to rest and we're given a final image of unlit animatronic heads. But if you just finish the game normally, you instead get this, the bad ending. An image of those exact same masks, but each one with one eye lit up. A spirit remains in each body. Well, all of them except for Golden Freddy's mask in the background, which has 2 eyes lit. 2 eyes for 2 spirits, and in the intervening years, 1 has been released. However, despite lots of pieces thematically lining up, there was one glaring issue here. Golden Freddy doesn't have himself an endoskeleton.
True.
It's a spring-lock suit. It's why Golden Freddy is always hunched over. He has no skeleton, no frame. So if Golden Freddy's now off the table, who else could it be? Well, obviously Obviously, his defining feature is that one lit eye, but it's not only that one eye is lit, it's that he's physically missing the second eye. So I sat down and went through my mind's encyclopedia of FNAF lore to remember what other characters only have one eye. Immediately, I thought Foxy might make a good contender, except Foxy isn't actually missing an eye. He just has one covered up by an eye.
Oh, yeah,
Same thing for
true.
Withered Foxy. Maybe it could be Lefty, the strange black animatronic bear from FNAF 6 that was designed as a capture suit for the puppet. Nope, the eye that's
Maybe.
missing is on the wrong side.
Oh.
Forget it. Maybe it is just a random endoskeleton because why not? It's security breach. But
No.
it's not that either. You see, FNAF 1 endoskeletons are canonically more boxy and streamlined, not this guy. The body in the blob is actually closer to the Endo O2 models that we see used in FNAF 2. Those have thin spring-like coils around their main skeleton. But even then, what we see in the blob is different. Notice the thick round discs that are directly connected to the skeletal structure. You don't see that in Endo O2s. It's almost like these things' arms are actually its legs.
Oh.
But that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, or does it? Because there is one animatronic that actually has hands connecting to leg joints. One with an Endo
Mangle?
O2 head that's missing its right eye. One with wires hanging out the side and with 4 rounded fingers at the end of each hand. It is
Mangle?
Mangle.
Yeah.
You know, it's Mangle's other head. That weird guy who's just kind of hanging out over
Mhm.
his body. It is a direct match. Okay, gotta be honest with you. I was excited to identify this mystery animatronic, but also, yeah, disappointed. This weird animatronic that's trying to pull itself out of the bottom of the blob feels like it should mean something special, but Mangle being the answer just feels empty. Like, yeah, we already know Mangle's in this thing. The head,
Yeah,
very
the head was
obvious
already
on
there,
the
yeah.
body. So, like so much else inside of this game, it was a mystery that led to a dead end. But hey,
Guess we
now that
still
have the
didn't
complete
find
and
it.
definitive
Yeah.
roster of who's inside this thing, we can actually start to figure out why they're inside this thing. Because these are some weird picks. When last we left everyone, we had Molten Freddy and Scrap Baby. So why do we now have older versions of these animatronics inside the blob? Also, how do we suddenly have FNAF 1 and 2 era animatronics mixed in when none of these older models were a part of FNAF 6's Fire?
Can someone please just use anything other than fire to kill these things? If at first you don't succeed, try again. But at a certain point, you just gotta like cut it off and be like, you know what? Maybe there's something else. Silver bullet, steak in the heart, garlic, just literally anything.
Honestly, this was the main reason I didn't want to cover the blob. It just felt like one big continuity error. But now that I've come to the end of my sanity trying to determine what animatronic a finger belongs to, I think an answer has presented itself to me through the darkness. And you know what? I was wrong. Dead wrong. So the opening area of Security Breach is Rockstar Row, and it's full of memorabilia from the past pizzerias. You got stuff like
Suppose.
Foxy's torso and jaw
Stream.
placed inside of display cases. There's also Bonnie's guitar, Freddy's bow tie, Chica's cupcake, even random stuff like Chica's feet or animatronic leg pieces.
fuck?
But it's not the items that are there that are interesting, it's the ones that are missing. If you look closely at these display
Missing.
cases, the majority of them have at least one missing item with a small description
Ah.
plaque in front of the empty space. Unfortunately, we can't see what exactly is on the plaques, but if torsos and feet are being displayed, then it isn't too hard to imagine that these could have been the heads, masks, arms, items that have been collected and added to the blob. In fact, that would explain
Could
why
be.
Circus Baby and Funtime Freddy heads inside of the blob instead of Scrap Baby and Molten Freddy. It's not a continuity error like all of us assume.
Was that a dream?
Really obscure.
I thought it was a dream, those
Remember that FNAF
animatronics.
location ended with all the animatronics teamed up to form Ennard, a literal tangle of wires and eyeballs, and that was pretty much it. But once Ennard was puked up and Baby got voted out of the team, that tangle of wires needed shape and form. This in turn gave rise to Scrap Baby and Molten Freddy,
Yeah.
creatures created from literal trash, not official versions of the characters, for as much as they might look like the original characters. As far as Fazbear Entertainment memorabilia is concerned, the Circus Baby mask and Funtime Freddy head, they're the latest versions of those characters. They're put on display for fans of the series to see. Parts that this tangle of black goo could steal from the displays and absorb into its own being. Same with the OG suits and Mangle Body. Scrap Baby and Molten Freddy, meanwhile, they're unofficial characters. They were never created by Fazbear Entertainment or displayed inside of a pizzeria. In short, I'm sorry, Steel Wool. I'm not sorry about a lot of the things I've said about some of the lore decisions in this game, but in this individual case, I'm sorry that I assumed that this was just a sloppy continuity error when in actuality, it was a lot more thoughtful than I could have ever expected. I just didn't give you enough benefit of the doubt here. So, like an overeager Funko Pop collector, there's a tangle of black wires lurking in the Pizzaplex hunting for souvenirs from the franchise. And believe it or not, this actually lines up with a random detail from the story New Kid in the third Fazbear Frights book. As a group of kids are exploring an abandoned abandoned Freddys restaurant, we get this line, quote, "While they were in the bathroom, Devin was pretty sure he heard something slithering through the walls. He didn't say anything. From the way the other boys' faces paled, he knew they heard it too." That is the line, and it never pays off. Not in this story, not in this book, not in the entire book series. The whole story actually winds up being a Golden Freddy story, strangely enough, but it leaves Chekhov's tentacle monster just sitting there in the walls waiting to be used, probably because it was meant to pay off in Security Breach, a game that was originally meant to release closer to that story's publication, but the repeated delays in Security Breach threw all of that synergistic programming off. Alright, so we know why it physically looks the way it does, but really, what are these tentacles? Well, that's where the puppet mask Missing Tears comes in. I think we're all familiar with this thing's story, right? In the aftermath of kids getting killed at Freddy's restaurants, the creator Henry institutes a security program in the form of the puppet. In FNAF 6, we literally see this thing called a security puppet. Sadly, Henry's daughter Charlie is killed outside of the confines of the restaurant. The puppet finds her too late and lies down beside her in the rain, and the two become one. And in FNAF 6, the last official time that we see this character, it comes complete with tears in its eyes. In fact, in every iteration of the character, the puppet mask has tears. Or should I say almost every iteration? Look at the security puppet minigame from before Charlie's death. The mask has no tears. It's only after Charlie dies and the thing is possessed that tears suddenly form on the mask. Tears mean that Charlie's soul is inside of this thing. But now, there are no tears left on the mask because Charlie's soul has been released. She's no longer inside Security Puppet. When Henry burned everything at the end of FNAF 6, it worked. Kinda. It freed all the souls that were trapped inside of the metal. This coincides with what we see on the blueprints for Remnant. Overheating might neutralize the effects permanently. However, it didn't work all the way. There's one thing that Henry's fire didn't account for, something that it didn't purge: agony. You see, Remnant soul metal might be the focus of the games, but it isn't the only powerful force that drives this franchise forward. The other is actually found within the pages of the Fazbear Frights books: agony. Now, it's important to distinguish the difference between agony and Remnant. I've seen a lot of places using the terms interchangeably, but in Fazbear Frights, they're explained to be distinctly different. Remnant is all about the soul. When an animatronic becomes possessed, that spirit literally becomes attached to the metal. That metal can then be melted down into a substance that Fazbear Frights describes as a boiling liquid mercury, aka Remnant. If you inject that metal into other animatronics, it suddenly brings them to life using the power of the original souls.
Okay.
Agony. In the books, agony is studied by Dr. Phineas Taggart. He states that agony, quote, has a greater energetic radius and power than any other emotion. I've done numerous experiments to measure, capture, contain, and study the leftover emotion embedded into objects that were near a tragedy. The book even goes so far to explain that the items Phineas has collected weren't possessed by ghosts or spirits, but instead were energized by agony. So when someone feels agony, it doesn't just stay with them, it can infect inanimate objects around them and linger there. In other words, while those original animatronics no longer have spirits powering them, the agony they felt while being murdered remains attached to the suits. That's why the Blob's interested in collecting the suits. It's not collecting spirits, it's collecting agony. By combining them, it becomes more powerful. All the pain and suffering of the children from over the years brought together to create one giant monster. That's why the eyes are glowing red for all the animatronics and endoskeletons. It's also why the puppet and baby aren't glowing. The puppet has been put to rest by her father. She's no longer tormented.
My daughter, if you can hear me, it's time to rest. For you and for those you have carried
Yeah.
in your arms.
And baby, well, yeah, she is certainly angry. She is jealous, but she's also eager to please her father even after death.
Now we can do what we were created to do and be complete. I will make you proud, Daddy.
She embraces the monster that she's become. She's not filled with agony, but everyone else, absolutely. Even in that finale
So they wanna
Henry say it.
This place will not be remembered, and the memory of everything that started this can finally begin to fade away, as the agony of every tragedy should.
Agony! Woo, woo, he did it! He said the word! So, there you have it, friends. Over half a year after the game's release, we finally solved the last mystery of Security Breach. The Blob isn't a giant continuity breaker, it's just a very cleverly composed amalgamation of animatronic parts slithering through the walls looking to accumulate agony. The tortured emotions coming from all the old animatronics on display throughout the Pizzaplex. And
To
now,
kill kill
Not convinced that we've seen the last of it. Despite the
Afton.
fact that the Afton ending's only worth 2 stars, when the highest is 3, the DLC poster does seem to indicate that the story is going to follow this particular ending. Notice the melted parts of Chica's face, the
Ooh.
ruined pizzaplex, which directly follows the building collapse and Afton's ending. But look a little closer. There are mysterious red eyes up in the top left, as well as some suspicious looking cables down in the bottom right. Even if the blob did finally kill Afton during the ending, the agony would still remain. It perseveres beyond death, and it isn't able to simply let go. In short, the blob is still very much a threat, something that is more powerful than anything we've ever faced in the franchise. In fact, maybe my previous prediction about the Afton amalgamation could still come to pass. As I called out in a previous theory, in the books, Afton gets mixed up with a bunch of agony, which creates a giant monster trash rabbit. And isn't that exactly what we're seeing in the ending of Security Breach? Afton mixed in with a bunch of agony parts. I suspect that Afton may be able to take control of this thing, overriding the blob's directionless rage and focusing it in order to wreak havoc on Gregory and whoever this new character might be, just like he does during the Stitch Wraith stories from Fazbear Frights. The only issue is, I'm not sure how we'd be able to stop it. In Fazbear Frights, the solution is to see into people's memories and trap them inside those memories. It's a pretty random power, so it's hard to say how that might work in the games. Unless, of course, this new character is meant to be someone that could remind Afton or the blob of good memories, bringing them back to reality and quelling the agony within. But that, my friends, is a theory for another day. So in the meantime, remember, it's all just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching.
Okay, so in DLC we might face the blob. Interesting. I don't think it's probably a jump scare or some shit. Alright, yo. I'm all caught up with the theories now for the FNAF. Let's go. But to be fair, there's not a lot he discovered. There's just a lot of question marks. It's not like a solid theory on like, yes, this is it, this is why, and you know. So like I feel like the first couple were blurry with their evidence, but the last 3 were even less what do you call it, convincing. Sure, he got like the best theory out there, but they're not really how do you say that, not believable, but like there's way too much questions left. Most of the time when this guy pulls out his theories, he convinces everyone, right? He convinces everyone to that the theory is correct, you know, like there's no questions left. All the questions have been answered, all the mysteries have been solved. But I feel like with the security breach theories, a lot of it made sense, right? Like the biggest parts in the theory, they were just not convincing enough, right? Like there were too many questions, there's too many question marks, there's too many this and this, right? I don't think MatPat is also like really happy with what he came up with. I think it's the best thing he could, but I don't think it's his favorite. He'd rather have better answers than he came in.